What if Gojo reincarnated as a curse? Gojo's death already felt wrong to the Jujutsu Kaisen fandom. He dies fighting Sukuna, appears in the airport-like space, and leaves as the strongest sorcerer who could still not reach the strongest curse user. But he was the strongest because he was Gojo. So what if death didn't send him north or south? What if his intense regret, crushing loneliness, and unfinished battle twisted him into a vengeful cursed spirit? Naoya proved a sorcerer can return as a curse when conditions are wrong, and the Six Eyes carry strange rules of fate. That's why a cursed Gojo would be a nightmare for the Jujutsu world. Well, I found 3 ways this story could continue. In the first theory, Gojo returns as a curse, but only for Sukuna. This version starts after the Shinjuku showdown. Gojo's body is gone, Sukuna is standing, and everyone is frozen between grief and strategy because they have no time to mourn. Kashimo steps forward, Yuta prepares, Yuji watches helplessly, and Shoko realizes something is off. Gojo's energy gathers. At first, everyone thinks it's residue. The air bends, space folds like a wound. Sukuna looks up, and his smile changes. A figure appears in the empty sky. It looks like Gojo, but wrong. The blindfold is gone. His eyes are open, glowing brightly, like the Six Eyes are no longer organs, but cursed stars burning inside a spirit. His body is pale, translucent, and space refuses to behave normally. The ground pulls away. Dust freezes. Sound slows down. Then he looks at Sukuna. That's the only thing he cares about. In this theory, Gojo's regret is narrow. He does not hate the students or attack random sorcerers. He returns because one thought stayed behind. He never reached Sukuna. The Curseborn is not the protector. It is his pure obsession. Sukuna loves it at first. To him, this is the perfect aftertaste of victory. He killed the strongest, who came back closer to pure cursed energy itself. But the fight feels different. Human Gojo had physical limits and flesh. Cursed Gojo is a phenomenon. Infinity is not activated, it leaks. Kashimo never gets his moment. Yuta cannot jump in. Yuji watches as Gojo and Sukuna tear open the battlefield. Because this cursed Gojo stems from one regret. He's unstable. The more he fights, the less human he becomes. Red detonates violently. Blue drags buildings into orbit. Purple becomes a spreading erasure that allies avoid. Eventually, Sukuna is pushed harder than before. But Gojo's curse starts breaking apart. That's the tragedy of Theory 1. He returns strong enough to hurt Sukuna before Yuji takes over. But he's incomplete. When his regret burns out, the curse dissolves. Yuji tries calling out. Yuta tries reaching him. Shoko freezes. Gojo looks back once. For a second, the curse looks like the teacher again. Then he disappears. In this version, Gojo helps defeat Sukuna sooner, but leaves everyone more damaged. Yuji watches his teacher die twice. Yuta feels useless twice. Shoko loses the ghost. Megami learns Gojo came back and could not stay. His legacy becomes more painful. Now that is the cleanest version. The second theory is worse because Gojo returns as a curse after Sukuna is defeated. This time the final battle plays out closer to canon. The students grind Sukuna down through sacrifice and stubbornness. Megami is saved. Sukuna finally falls. The students should safely breathe. Then the real horror begins, because Gojo's curse does not awaken during the battle. Instead, it awakens at the moment the battlefield goes quiet. In life, Gojo was always surrounded by noise. Students yelling, enemies challenging, and higher-ups fearing him. The world leaned on him. After death, there's nothing left to hold up. That emptiness becomes the trigger. The curse forms above the ruins of Shinjuku, and this version is not focused only on Sukuna. It's focused on the idea of being alone at the top. That makes him terrifying. This cursed Gojo attacks anything with strong cursed energy. Yuta feels it first because he's closest to Gojo's level. Maki feels her instincts scream as space bends. Yuji realizes the pattern. Cursed Gojo is searching for someone who can answer. Yuta tries to talk. That fails immediately. This is where Theory 2 becomes a nightmare for power scaling. A special grade cursed Gojo would be worse than Naoya by an absurd margin. Naoya returned faster and more monstrous after death. If that applied to Gojo, Limitless would stop being bound by human strain. The Six Eyes would process energy through a cursed body. He might not need sleep or healing. Even with fragmented intelligence, his unbridled instincts alone would be genuinely apocalyptic. Yuta is affected the most here. Gojo once trusted him as a student who could carry the future. Now Yuta has to exorcise him. This is an awful mirror of Jujutsu Kaisen 0. Back then, Yuta freed Rika from a curse born of love. Here, he frees Gojo from a curse born of loneliness. Rika would hesitate because this is not an ordinary curse. Maki becomes the second key player. Infinity is a curse technique, and Maki is one of the few fighters who creates exceptions. Her physical body exists outside normal logic. If anyone slips through openings when Gojo's curse destabilizes, it's her. Getting close is suicide for anyone else, so Maki becomes the blade Yuta must swing. Yuji becomes the heart of the fight. He cannot overpower this version of Gojo. This is not his role. His role is to remind everyone what Gojo wanted. Gojo didn't train monsters to worship him. He trained them to surpass the world. So Yuji stands before the curse, refusing to treat it normally. He calls it the leftover wound. This is what gives Yuta and Maki the opening. The exorcism is brutal. Yuta expands his domain. Maki cuts through when infinity flickers. Yuji lands a soul-targeting blow to separate the man from the curse. The curse screams, and the real Gojo finally appears. He smiles, knowing he caused one last impossible problem. Then Yuta finishes it. In this theory, the world is saved, but the emotional damage is enormous. Yuta becomes the man who killed Gojo's ghost. Yuji learns the strongest can leave behind something genuinely ugly. Maki proves the new generation can cut down the old system. The future becomes healthier only after destroying their teacher's last shadow. But the third theory is the real nightmare scenario. Because in this version, Gojo becomes a curse and does not get exorcised. He becomes the new balance of the world. The starting point is the same. Gojo dies, Sukuna falls, and surviving sorcerers try to rebuild. But Gojo's curse forms slowly. Strange things happen around places tied to him. The sealed ruins, the old Gojo estate, Shinjuku, the place where Geto died, places his students fought. At first, people think it's residual cursed energy. Then a curse user disappears inside the Gojo clan grounds. Then an investigating squad is found frozen, their minds overloaded like they stared into unlimited void for far too long. That's when the truth becomes unavoidable. Gojo is back, and he's learning. This cursed Gojo is not mindless, nor fully sane. He's somewhere in between, a ghost reconstructing himself from memory, instinct, and regret. He remembers Sukuna, Geto, Yuji, Yuta, Megumi, Nobara, and Shoko. But the emotions distort. Love becomes possession. Protection becomes control. Teaching becomes testing. That's why he becomes so dangerous. He doesn't start by slaughtering civilians. He starts by judging sorcerers. If a cursed user hurts people, Cursed Gojo erases them. If a sorcerer is weak, he breaks them. If clans try to rebuild the old power structure, he appears above their halls and crushes the room without touching it. If the higher-ups try to classify him, he makes the classification meaningless. Japan enters a new age where the strongest thing alive is no longer a sorcerer. It's a curse wearing Gojo's face. This destroys the Six Eyes cycle too. Normally, the Six Eyes appear through fate, tied to Tengen and the vessel. If Gojo's Six Eyes remain trapped in a cursed form, the cycle jams. No new inheritor is born because the current Six Eyes never truly left. The clan loses its future. Jujutsu society loses an ancient anchor. The system mutates around a dead man who refuses to pass on. The connection to fate makes a cursed Gojo dangerous as a permanent anomaly. Yuji is the only one who understands the moral problem. Everyone else asks how to exorcise Gojo. Yuji asks whether Gojo is suffering. That matters because Yuji lived inside curses, carried Sukuna, fought Mahito, and learned how ugly the boundary between soul and cursed energy becomes. He knows this thing is dangerous, but it might be in pain. Yuji keeps trying to reach him, forming the emotional spine. Yuta disagrees. He believes leaving Gojo behind as a curse dishonors him. Maki agrees for practical reasons. Shoko agrees because she cannot bear watching his face grow colder every year. Megumi understands possession and quietly says he must be stopped. So the final battle becomes the new generation against the ghost of the old strongest. And they lose the first time. Yuta's domain is overwhelmed. Maki reaches him once and gets thrown through 3 buildings. Yuji lands a soul punch, but the curse adapts. Megumi's shadow gets twisted by spatial distortion. Nobara's resonance hits something inside Gojo, but the backlash nearly kills her. Cursed Gojo leaves him alive because some part of him still sees students. That mercy is worse than death. It means he's still in there, but not enough to stop. Now jump forward. This is where Modulo becomes terrifying. Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo is set in 2086. 68 years after the Culling game, where Jujutsu moved into an entirely new era with Yuka and Tsurugi Okotsu, anchoring the massive center of the futuristic sequel. In this timeline, the ghost of Gojo is the forbidden disaster of that era. Older sorcerers do not talk about him as a person. They call him the White Curse, the empty limit, the curse that cannot be approached, the reason no new Six Eyes user appears, the reason entire Tokyo districts are permanently sealed. And then Yuji, still alive in the Modulo era, hears that Gojo has moved again. That's the future implication. Old Yuji faces the teacher he failed to save, the curse he failed to exorcise, and the symbol of a world that never let its strongest rest. Yuka and Tsurugi fully inherit the unfinished curse. That makes Theory 3 the most frightening one. The first theory gives Gojo one last battle with Sukuna. The second forces his students to exorcise him after victory. The third turns him into a permanent scar on the Jujutsu world, a special grade curse so powerful that even decades later, the future still bends around his regret. And that is why Cursed Gojo works so well as a nightmare scenario, because the scariest version of Gojo isn't Gojo with more power. It's Gojo with the same power, no humanity left to restrain it, and just enough love remaining to make him impossible to hate. But that begs the question, how would the Shibuya incident be different if the Protector Gojo entered Shibuya that day with his memories of the future? Well, that's the subject of this other video. Click on this video to see what it would be like if Gojo was reborn with his memories. Go ahead, click it.